A Pittsfield man accused of sexually assaulting a dog, which was left paralyzed and later euthanized, is now facing federal charges for allegedly sexually exploiting a child. We want to warn you, the details of this report are disturbing. 24-year-old Christopher Colson was charged with possession of child pornography and of sexual exploitation of a child in federal court in Bangor last Wednesday. Court records show Colson was arrested last Thursday and later released. In April 2024, a then 6-year-old girl made a sexual abuse allegation at school, alleging Colson had touched her inappropriately. Police interviewed Colson, who denied the allegations, and the case was closed. In October 2024, it's alleged that Colson showed explicit photos of a woman and an infant to his employer, who then reported it to police. In October of this year, the FBI found Colson had images of the 6-year-old as a toddler on 3 Google accounts. Court records show Colson lived with the girl and her mother for several years. The mother confirmed to authorities that the pictures in Colson's possession were of the girl. Colson was released on $5,000 bail in federal court. As part of his bail conditions, he is not allowed to have contact with the victim or anyone under the age of 18. Colson has been ordered to live in a group home in Lewiston, and any contact with residents of that program must be supervised.